Yeah, g'day everyone, and welcome back to the TryPod Live with Clarkey and Winnie. We are here to recap round 23, talk about all the NRL action, and go through our best bets and let you know how they went as well. Let's jump straight into this show, Winnie. How are you going, mate? And how did we go on the best bets front in round 23?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, thanks, mate. I'm kind of in a sports coma. I've watched obviously every minute of NRL, but then I find myself watching a lot of NRLW and, of course, the Olympics, which I'll get to. The medal multi is coming down to the final night of the games. 3 of the legs have cashed, and the final leg has 2.5 gold medals to play with. But we'll cover that at the end. Best bets. 4 and 2. I was a little bold, maybe going 6 best bets, but you got to be happy with 4 and 2, especially when you do cash the mixed matchup as well, which I think cashed by a good 20 points. That was Manly to outscore the Bulldogs, though the Bulldogs were mighty impressive. Manly had way too many on the board earlier in the afternoon. That was the game with my same gamer, and I went Hamole, and he was one of the few Manly players that actually didn't cross.
He did make that line break where I thought he was going to go over them, which I was cheering for him to go all the way. He got close. I'll let the team down this week, guys. Clarkey's collect misses. I felt like I really got away with the first leg with the Melbourne Storm. Panthers, of course, I needed them to win by 10. That misses. And Manly plus 6.5. Everyone kind of said it in the preview show. That's so cautious. And in the end, it was way too cautious, realistically. So we do lose 1 unit there on the Clarkey's collect, only up plus 13 now. But we'll go again.
We'll get to it, of course, but that's a tough weekend to be a Titans fan. People know that your boys went down 44-0 yesterday, and they will hear your thoughts on that, but maybe not everyone knows. What was the final score of the M1 Derby in the NRLW today?
So we lost 44-4 in the NRLW, so conceded 44 there. We conceded 42 to the Hunters with our affiliate side Tweed, and our other affiliate side, the Ipswich Jets, lost 46-4. So we averaged 44 points.
A bit of Broncos. I told you in the NRLW, 0-2 against 2-0, and the Broncos were decent underdogs. And 44, that means that the Titans men's side lost 44-0, and then you watched the Titans women's side outscored 44-0 as well before they got the final consolation try. So it was 88 straight points. So I'm sure Clarkey's a little battered and bruised this weekend, but that's probably part of the reason some people tune in.
You say you're in a sports coma. I wish I was in a sports coma as a Titans fan, if I'm absolutely honest. But let's go through, mate, and let's break it down game by game. I'll kick us off with game 1. Storm defeat the Rabbitohs 28 points to 16. And with our Clarkey's collect, we did need the Storm here to win by 10 points. And I thought that was a little conservative in the preview show. I did say I see Storm winning by 20-30 because I did expect an 80-minute performance from them. And in the end, I look back from a punting perspective, this was one where I got to full time and I acknowledged I got away with one there. Didn't really deserve to win it because the Melbourne Storm, quite simply, did not put in an 80-minute performance. It was more closer to a 40-minute performance, and that was coming in the first half there. They actually lost the second half to the Rabbitohs, and that's something I would have never predicted with the Storm coming off a loss. But I don't think the Rabbitohs were too much better than I expected. 6 of their points did come directly off a Storm error, and they ran the field and got the conversion. That puts them down, to 10 points there. That's probably where I did see the Bunnies. But the Storm, I didn't expect them to be at this level. I expected them to get to a bit of a higher level, Winnie, than what we saw here. And the only thing I can kind of offer as a saving grace for the Melbourne Storm would be because of who they know their opposition is next week. Maybe they had one eye looking forward to that and just trying to get through this game. And, of course, I am referencing the Panthers, and I've got the kind of the same theme for the Panthers game, which we'll get to as well, mate. But before we get to that, let's get your thoughts on the Rabbitohs and Storm game, please.
I think you're spot on. So bad call by me because I had best bets on Melbourne and on Penrith this week. I did get out of those 1-1, but they were both so below their best, perhaps looking ahead to the grand final before the finals, at least the regular season final. It's probably going to decide who wins the minor prem, who carries the momentum and ascendancy into the finals, and it's just going to be on a different level, and we can't wait for it Thursday night. And even if it wouldn't have been mentioned during the weeks, it's probably in the back of people's minds. And we did get Melbourne well below their best in the second half, which was the worst part of this, because my best bet was -7.5 second half. Penrith arguably weren't good for 60 minutes before they finally woke up. But This annoys me a bit because it was 24-6 at halftime. Melbourne's up 18 at halftime. As Ryan says, he had 13 plus. He had team to win both halves. So you're a pretty sweet position there. So you would think, especially when Melbourne comes out and scores the first try of the second half and it's a long range trial. And then it's just error after error after error, so sloppy, going through the motions. I really didn't even think Souths did anything much. You give them a little credit for not giving up, but Melbourne were just horrible. It's like, I just feel I would have won that bet if Melbourne was below average. Anywhere near average Melbourne, even below average, it just cruises to a win there. But Melbourne was so bad. And on the back of losing at home, that's where I thought we'd get the effort, because we've got to tune up. We've got to regain that ruthless edge again before the Penrith match. And as you say, Melbourne scores that 4 points early in the second half, doesn't score again, and is actually beaten in the second half. And the only solace I can take is that I liked Melbourne. I thought they would be clinical here, and up 18 at halftime, but they actually didn't cover the full game line, which was between 14 and a half and 16 and a half. No matter where you got it, you probably lost laying it with Melbourne because of that very subdued second half. And it doesn't really cost them. They do win by 12, but the minor prem could still be dictated by points differential. And that's the kind of game where, honestly, you should be beating a team by 40 or 50 from the position you're in once you're up above 20 in the second half. Souths are asking to be put away. Melbourne refused to do it.
And I just couldn't believe the Storm's completion rate in that second half. It fell off a cliff. It would have been like the sixth time in a row. I remember just saying to the TV, finish a effing set. I was frustrated watching the Storm because we just didn't expect this from them. But, I mean, credit to them. They still won by 12 points, right? And they were horrible, realistically, by their standards and by any standards. So you got to give them some credit, I suppose, there. Next game. Yeah, I was going to say, can we skip this one? Sharks defeat my Titans 44 points to nil. And you guys know I tipped the Titans here, and I thought there was real value in our recap show last week where we were slight underdogs. In the end, there wasn't a betting line you could take big enough that you would have won on them. Like, genuinely, you probably couldn't have got plus 44. I don't think it would have gone that high. As a Titans fan, in a way, I am kind of struggling to understand what happened here. I thought we'd made a lot of really good improvements under Des Hasler, where these no-shows were, they were happening in the first half against the Dolphins and the Broncos, but the second halves were so strong. And it's almost a reverse of last year, if you remember the Titans. Last year, when the Titans would have been first for first halves only on the ladder. And if you go back the last 5 rounds coming into this game, the Titans would have actually been first on the NRL ladder as well. So they were in the best form of anyone in the comp, realistically. And I just think from a general football analysis, all I can say is my worst fears from our previous show were confirmed. If you guys remember, I did mention as kind of a closing point saying, I think the only way the Titans lose here is if they treated last week as a grand final and, kind of don't rock up with the same attitude. And that certainly appeared the case because the Titans were soundly defeated by the Sharks in every single aspect of rugby league. And it was evident from the first set of the game. The Sharks just rolled up the field, and the Titans, it felt like they could not get out of their own end. Then we go into the last 10 minutes where the Sharks are down to 10 men, and it still didn't change. So the Sharks were just utterly dominant here. All you can do is applaud them for this performance because they did remind the league that, hey, the Titans are the new shiny toy. They're in a bit of form, but we're a top 4 side, right? And I think they gave the Titans and the league a big reminder. And I guess final point, Winnie, it does also really point out the Titans are an improving football side. They're not there yet. Like they still have the possibility of this no-show in their game and in their repertoire. So disappointed, mate. Didn't see it coming, but I give full credit to the Sharks. They were awesome. I want to know, you only had the Sharkies in the first half, so that would have been a very comfortable best bet.
Yeah, what was it? Was it 30-0? Half-time,
I think. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah. So we had Sharks plus 3.5 first half. So that felt good. The start was going to be important after Cronulla found themselves down quickly early against the Titans a month ago. Some great comments coming in about betting on the minor premiership versus betting on Storm Panthers next week. Clarkey, I don't know if you can make a note. I'd like to talk a little bit about that maybe after we've covered the Panthers game. Then we can bring some of these comments up on the screen about what you should back in terms of value for minor prem. With this game, that's right. Everyone did forget that Cronulla are in the top 4 and Canterbury coming home with a wet sail, and will gladly take that spot. And a lot of people will tell you Canterbury deserve it over Cronulla. But when you consider the players that have been out for the Sharks, and there was both their starting spine were out, starting halves were out in this one, Cronulla's an impressive footy team. And I just got this sense that the Sharkies knew that nobody was going to win the game for them. It was an all-in effort. Everybody had to be at their best and everyone had to work together. They didn't take Titans lightly whatsoever. They knew they were going into a tough environment against a red-hot side, a team that had dealt with them earlier. So just 100% laser focus by Cronulla. And when a good side is fired up, wants revenge, and is totally switched on, they're going to be hard to beat. And then it's a perfect storm because you called it. The Titans' attitude, they are still not a top 8 side. They don't have that consistency. They can play like a top 8 side when they're on, but they're always going to have a letdown here or there. And after playing what you call their grand final, and you noted it on Tuesday that may be a concern for people back in the Titans, and that was dead right, because the combination of falling away behind in the game and just staring at each other, why isn't anything working? And this is a game where Brimson came back and you thought might add a spark, but it's the opposite to Cronulla. Everyone's looking at each other to create something, whereas Cronulla was just dialed in, and they had to be when you saw what Canterbury did the next day. It does mathematically end your finals campaign, which was very faint hopes anyway, but it's still a sad moment, and it is a gut punch. And the highs and lows, the extremes, hey, like you've outscored Brisbane 36-0 in the second half. They're a week later. Isn't a week a long time in footy? It's what is that, an 80-point swing? Because you've gone from 36 straight to then conceding 44 straight to Cronulla. And we'll talk about Brisbane, how much they turned it around as well. So I can understand some people wouldn't have seen these ones coming, but luckily I did, and I was glad to cash a winner as easy as you like.
And I have to admit, before this game, all the articles started coming out on Fox Sports, Daily Telegraph, Des Hasler, how he turned around the Titans and has them primed for finals. And just reading stuff like that, I was like, this is the last thing a young team needs to be reading before a game or seeing in the headlines. I knew that was going to have a negative effect, but not this much. I still thought we could have won. So really, really poor and unfortunate, but great for our best bets. Alrighty, game 3. I referenced this one a little bit earlier in the Storm versus Rabbitohs recap. The Panthers defeat the Parramatta Eels 36 points to 34. And I am so disappointed in the Panthers here, purely from a punting perspective, right? Because from a football perspective, the fact they come back and won is incredible. But from a punting perspective, now they do lose Mitch Kenny, Scott Sorensen, and Matt Eisenhuth at stages throughout the first half there. And naturally, that does hurt your rotations and put a little bit of pressure on the other players on the starting team there. But to concede 34 points to the Eels when their season average is 15 points conceded. Like, of all the teams the Panthers are going to concede more than double their season average to, it's the second last place Eels. Did not see that coming. And the Eels, of course, as we spoke about in the preview show, they only average 20 points this year per game. And against the best defensive side, you'd probably think that number would drop a little bit. You certainly wouldn't think it would get close to doubling. Now, they almost won this game. And if they did win it, it would have been their first back-to-back win since June last year, which is like round 10-ish or something. So I really did break this game down, guys. It's not like I'm claiming to be a genius. Of course, everyone was tipping the Panthers. But in terms of trying to play it safe for Clarkey's collect, I just thought the Panthers were a side that I just couldn't miss. I thought that they were really going to show up here. And ultimately, rugby league says, stuff you. It is an unpredictable sport. That's why we love it. But frustrating watching this. Final point for me was the Panthers giving up 12 points off their own errors. There was the knock-on in the first minute for Blaze Talungi to go over, virtually untouched. And then Luai pulling on a Tigers jersey a little bit earlier and giving – sorry, Tigers fans. But you know what I mean? They only average 15 points conceded per game this year, Winnie. Well, there's 12 off their own errors. And I just couldn't have predicted that coming. So ultimately, it was not their night, but they still found a way to win, which in itself is very, very impressive when you consider everything that went against them here. I want to get your thoughts on the game, and then I want to hear your thoughts on the premiership market and how you see it currently.
Yeah, you have to impress with the finish to that game. The final 20 minutes, no right to win that game. And you talk about the players that went out early in the game, and I said in the preview, just don't forget, Vicious Fish is out, Dylan Edwards is out. I'm still backing Penrith, but luckily I did play Penrith overs. For one reason, I don't feel Parramatta's got the toughness at this stage, at this point, with this personnel to keep it low scoring. So I knew that Parramatta would play reckless, but I also knew there'd be plenty of opportunities for Penrith. Boy, they left it late. My overs was over 30.5 points. Did I say Nathan Cleary is the greatest player we've ever seen? I mean, we keep seeing more and more evidence each week. It's crazy. They came back from, 14 down against the Dolphins, 26-12, I think it was, and that was with no Origin players other than Cleary, who didn't play Origin this year. And this one, they were down. When Gutho scored that try, they were down 14, I think, 14 points late. And Liam Martin went to the bin, and it was as if Penrith only got stronger when they went down to 12. You are lamenting this one. Just a reminder for people, that's your one losing leg of Clarkey's Collect. You liked Penrith, but you took an alt line, but you took -9.5, still thinking a double-digit win should be comfortable. The line closes 16.5. So this is what I'm talking about. I got it wrong because I thought Penrith, after getting a scare against the Knights, would be clinical, similar to Melbourne. But also similar to Melbourne, perhaps they had one eye looking to next week and looked like they were going to blow this game. And then next week wouldn't even probably matter for the minor prem context because Melbourne would have had a 4-point buffer. But to come back and score 16 points in the final 7 minutes, I know there's a bit of controversy with a lead runner on the try that puts Penrith in front. We needed that try as well because over 30.5. What did I say in the preview? That Cleary doesn't miss. He's been automatic. We've got 5 tries. We got a penalty goal, but we needed the sideline conversion to get over 30.5 points. And of course, he missed it. So I thought the game was going to end 34-30 to Para, and we could have actually won the team total over despite losing the game. But no, there was another try in Penrith, and they hit the front 36-34, and that wasn't the end of the game either because then Para goes short kickoff and then challenges a knock on. No, Parramatta gets awarded the ball for a knock on by Penrith. Penrith challenge whether they knocked on, and the bunker finds an escort by Cleary and says, not only you're not winning you're winning the challenge, it's not a knock on, but now it's a penalty to Para to take the shot at goal to send this to Golden Point. And Gutho gets the penalty shot, and he's not a first choice kicker, but it's like the exact spot on the field where he had that shot for the win last season, wasn't it, against the Tigers? And he shanks it basically in an identical fashion. And while Para did get one final set to throw it at Penrith, it wasn't to be. And just if they get it extra time, they may not win anyway. It's a tough one. It's still, once again, it just sums up Parramatta's season this year, unfortunately. And it sums up what Penrith are all about. There is no give up in them. They just don't know when they're beaten. And when you've got that much talent, you can understand why they are so confident, why they can pull these wins off that should not be possible.
100%, man. Needing -9.5 for this leg here. The way the Panthers played, it was almost like, we'll still get them at the end. They just didn't seem too phased until we really did get into that last 5 minutes. And then they're like, okay, now we'll win it. I did see a comment roll through on Facebook from Jeremy Kerwin. He says, underestimate teams at your Peril. And definitely agree with Jeremy there. I did underestimate the Eels in this one. But the flip side of that, Jeremy, is I overestimated the Raiders because Manly defeat them 46 points to 24. And
hey, mate, you jumped ahead. Minor Prem talk, if you don't
mind.
Alrighty,
let's do it.
Thursday night, without stepping on the preview for Thursday night, Penrith's about $1.55 at home. Melbourne $2.50. The minor premiership race, if I could find that, Penrith's $1.80. Melbourne at $2. Harry Potter reckons he's found Melbourne $2.20 for the minor prem. Okay, so the minor prem is slightly closer than the Thursday night match. That's because Melbourne is 2 points ahead of Penrith. I believe their points differentials are almost level. I can bring it up as we speak. They're within 5 points of each other. So you have to think whoever wins the game will probably have the superior points differential. But if Penrith wins a narrow one, they could be basically equal points and equal differential. So Harry Potter's point is you play Storm for the minor prem. especially if you can get a bit over $2. You're not getting as good a price as the head-to-head on Thursday, but if they win, you've locked up the minor prem. You're 4 points clear with 3 rounds to go. If you lose, you're still close to a 50-50. Now, I definitely think Melbourne's a decent underdog if Melbourne loses on Thursday, because I think Penrith's got easier games. That'll be easier to build up the points differential. It also might not be a narrow win. It might be a decent win if Penrith wins by 10, 14 points. That's like a 28-point swing on the differential. And Melbourne's got that trip up to North Queensland that could be important for the Cowboys, where Penrith, last time I checked, doesn't play anybody that's going to threaten them. Though Harry Potter says Penrith could rest people anyway. So there's that double chance too. So I definitely agree. If you think the Storm might win on Thursday night, maybe you do hunt the best minor premiership price about Melbourne. And it won't be as good as the head-to-head, but it's a double chance, because if you win, you're sweet. And if you lose, you may still be alive. Conversely, don't play Penrith minor premiership this week. If you think they're going to win, just back them this week, because it won't be locked up, though they will have the box seat.
Would the Storm's odds increase up from $2.20 if they were to lose this round? Like, is there any risk there that they buy an increase?
For sure. So if Penrith wins, then I'll predict Penrith's going to be $1.30 for the minor prem, and Melbourne's going to be $3 plus. But you still have a chance. That's my point. So that's why you sacrifice 30 cents in the price on Thursday night to win, to still have a ticket that's got like a 30% chance of cashing.
Yep, you're giving yourself that double chance. That's good analysis there, man. And the comments seem to mostly agree. Ryan says, if you like Panthers next week, just wait if you want to bet Storm for the minor premiership, which we just went over then, so that's okay. Game 4, mate, Manly defeat the Raiders 46 points to 24. And I'll tell you what, I thought the first half of this game should have been 12-all, if not in the Raiders' favour. A little bit unfortunate there, but it was a grindy affair in that first half, and it was slow despite the daytime conditions, and that was really suiting the Raiders' game plan. They want that sort of slower game where their forwards can come into it. We saw Josh Papali'i score as well, for example. My other observation I made in that first half specifically was the involvement of Daly Cherry-Evans, and that was that it was virtually non-existent. Luke Brooks was taking the fifth tackle options. He was running things, and DCE was more of the 5'8", just hanging out on his edge there and not really getting too much involved. But once that game did open up, it really did suit Manly, particularly in the daytime conditions. You know, they're sweeping backline plays left to right. Once they got that momentum and took the lead, it's like they kind of felt like, how would I explain this? They felt they had a bit of insurance and they were willing to take a few more risks. Whereas when it was slow and tight, they played slow and tight, and that's not what suits Manly with their backline spark. In the early game, I was starting to think like this is one that the Raiders could get away with, because it was similar to the Bulldogs game where it's nice and close and you stay in that grindy affair for the 80 minutes, and that's what they want. But I think Manly's ability to score like they do, long-range tries, spark across really both sides of the field there, I think that gives them a big advantage in the finals, because if they do score early, we've seen in the game in the second half that their confidence just rises and they do take a few more risks, and it works so well for them. And then you go to the teams they've beat this year, right? They've beat the Storm, they've beat the Panthers, they've beat the Roosters, and they've beat the Cowboys. So all those teams are around them on the ladder or above them. We haven't seen them versus the Bulldogs yet. We won't see that until round 26, but based on what I saw in this round from both teams, I would be tipping Manly if that was next round, for example. So, Winnie, I'm going to go ahead and name Manly Sea Eagles as my dark horse this year. I haven't heard too many people discuss them in the premiership race, and I bet Manly wish that the grand final was still played in the afternoon at daytime, because that would suit them a treat. But, man, I reckon they're my dark horse. I really can't see anyone else fitting into that category. So, great win here by Manly, and I'm going to name them my premiership dark horse. How did you see the game, and afterwards, do you have a dark horse for the premiership?
With Manly, you have to respect them, and when they're hot, they're very hard to handle. The same question's always going to be, can they mix it with the top 4 teams? And that's what everyone was asking when Manly played a pretty hot Roosters team. And they came out of that a 34-30 respectable loss. But again, they did score 3 length of the field intercept tries. So did they really challenge the Roosters on the scoreboard? And in terms of having a little shot late, giving the Roosters a fright, yes. But were they on the Roosters level? And are the Roosters a top echelon team? Because some will say Roosters are a clear peg below your Panthers and Storm. And to win the premiership, you probably got to take out both of those teams, right? Unless you get a charmed run. But realistically, Penrith and Melbourne will be on opposite sides of the draw. So for someone to win the comp, it would have to beat the pair of them most likely. I can't say I see that out of Manly, but this week they were my best bet. I did respect them and expect a good performance coming in off the bye with revenge on their mind, because it was the Raiders that came back from 18 or 20 down at Brookie earlier this year and stunned the Seagulls. Now the Seagulls are really climbing. And while the Raiders did score first, you're right, Manly just had more gears to go through, blew the Raiders out. The Raiders poured it all in at Belmore on Sunday. And it was just too tough for that Raiders team to back it up and play it at that level or near that level again. Even the 24 that the Raiders get, they scored a couple of late tries. This was a blowout by Manly. And I had the same observation that Manly just kept giving it to Brooks. He let him run the show the whole first half. And it reminded me of a scene that, I don't know, 1 in 10 people might get this reference, but there's a movie called Princess Bride where the guy's having a sword fight and he's smiling, and the other character says, "Why are you smiling?" He says, "Because I know something you don't know. I'm not left-handed." And he's fighting left-handed, but he's got this whole extra level that if he wants to, he'll switch the sword to the right hand. And that's kind of what Manly did in the second half was, oh, yeah, DCE's here as well, and came to play and added his class. Because I was on Manly my 3.5, and I'm like, DC, what are you doing? Get in the game, mate. Look alive. But in the end, Manly flexed. My dark horse, you have put me on the spot. Trying to think who else you can consider. So what, can you take the Roosters, who were idle this week after Perth? If you won't give me them, clearly the Dogs are called pre-season, and I had them in my top 8, but they're not under the radar. Everyone is on them, and we'll talk about them very shortly. The Cowboys disappointed me majorly. I don't think Manly's a bad call at all when they're on. Could upset somebody. Just can't see them going all the way. So I don't have a clear dark horse. I think there's clear levels. But if people are riding off the Roosters, I'm still looking at them maybe being under the radar, just because if the Chooks can get the defense right, the attack's on the level of the teams above them. Let me say that. Do we go to the game that I really don't know if I can explain at all?
Yeah, let's move to that game. Just quickly before we do, one thing I've actually remember about the Roosters was in 2018, I was sitting on my phone waiting for the Billy Slater judiciary. As soon as he got cleared to play the grand final, I pressed bet on Storm, and I thought they would win. And after Trent Robinson beat them in the post-game press conference, he actually said, we had the blueprint to beat the Storm this year in round 1, but we didn't want to roll it out and use it. And I always keep that in the back of my mind now for the Roosters in the finals. So I think they could be a different beast this year again, with a really strategic game plan from Robbo when it matters, that he doesn't want to kind of reveal his hand in the regular season. Maybe I've got a tinfoil hat on. I'll just always remember getting burned by that bet. Game 5,
you know
mate.
What?
Yeah.
There is another dark horse I should mention. They're so under the radar that they did not come to my mind. But we shouldn't forget about them, because we watched them win 44-0 this weekend without their Dally M halfback, without their other gun half Trindle. Nobody's talking about Cronulla. I'm just saying that's a team that is going to be capable of pulling an upset or two in the finals. And if Cronulla met Manly in the finals, that would be a hell of a game. And if Nico, that's a challenging one because he's only meant to return from his injury right around round 27. So are you telling me I get full fitness, Nico? And I know there's a lot of people out there that just have totally written Hines off and don't even think he's a plus player or a difference maker. I haven't gone that far, but if you give me full strength Manly, full strength Cronulla, and the Sharkies most likely would host that game, I would pick Cronulla to win, So let me say the Sharkies are my dark horse because nobody else will give them any chance. But they should. They're still running top 4.
That's a great call, man. And someone like Nico, they won't have that recent footage on him. So he'd kind of be returning, not as a massively unknown, but there would be an element of the unknown in his game and how the Sharks are going to play with him back with that added pressure of finals. So it's a great call. Game 5 was in Townsville. The Broncos defeat the Cowboys there, 42 points to 18. And I'll admit, I was surprised by this result. I just didn't see it coming. I knew that the Broncos would hit absolute rock bottom eventually and galvanize and will get a strong performance like this from them that they're capable of. But I just didn't see any reason why it should be this game. The same way I didn't see why it should be the Titans game. I tipped the Titans there as well. And I've been looking for it these last few weeks, and I just haven't really found the reason why. Particularly after they lost the second half, 36-0 to the Titans, who then went on to lose to the Sharks 44-0. If anything, because we already saw that on Friday night, it really solidified the Cowboys as locks here for me. I didn't see where they would lose this game. And I know the Cowboys haven't been noted for their defense at times throughout this season, and they have tried to fight attack with attack, but to concede 42 points to the Broncos, like, come on, whilst they're missing key players, that is the Broncos' highest score this year. And in their last 5 games, they're averaging 19 points. So how do you do it? Like, you break that down statistically. That does not make sense by the Cowboys there. Onto them, really poor management during the game, Winnie. And I want to say overall with their whole organization, because for me, they've been stuck in this awkward spot for the last 2 or 3 years, right, where they're not quite an elite team that's going to challenge for anything, but they haven't been bad enough to justify key changes. And they've just floated around and wasted the prime years of some of the people on their roster, including Jason Tamalolo. And I will stand by this. The biggest mistake this club made was re-signing Chad Townsend. I believe they needed to hand the keys to Dearden at a young age, because he's shown that same year he can win an Origin game and a decider when Munster was ruled out. They needed Drinkwater at 6, and they needed to keep the hammer at fullback. They would have had an all rep level, basically, spine there. But it is what it is, and their game management here was really poor. They opened the door, and they allowed chances for the Broncos to take momentum and really swing in their favor, despite their recent form woes. And, I will say for the Broncos, yes, they've been so poor for the last 9 weeks, but you just go through that roster 1 to 17, and of course they're still missing superstars like Payne Haas and Ezra Mam. It's still classy enough that if you were to tell me in the pregame and when I had to make a prediction for this game, the Cowboys are going to continually make errors, they're going to continually make missed tackles, and they're just going to leave the door always open for the Broncos. That was the biggest concern. They were up 18-6, but you never felt comfortable because they were just leaving the door open with silly play. In the end, far too dominant there by the Broncos. So it was great to see them get a win. And my final takeaway was, of course, Nicole from Wiki's tip. He tipped big Xavier Willison to score the last try at $101, which hits. So a monster tip there from Wiki, one of the partners of TryPod. So awesome work there by Nicole. And I want to know, mate, how did you see this game?
Yeah, massive shout out to Nicole. He's giving us the tips every week. And he's hit here or there, but he probably hasn't had the strongest season by his own admission. But you don't need to hit often. When you hit 100 to 1, like hitting 100 to 1 on the live pod, like that's legendary. I'm talking about Willison, as you said. He had him anytime try score at $17, but also said first try was 100 to 1 and last try 100 to 1. And Willison did score last. So though I was shell-shocked, I was cheering for Nicole. It was amazing, an amazing hit, and a great, bright note out of this game, where I lost my best bet and got it totally wrong, and I still am confused as to how that happened. I took the Cowboys minus 7.5 because I knew the importance of North Queensland. I have the Cows at home. They're the strongest side. Yes, they're missing Tamalolo, but he's not even as important as he used to be. It's basically full strength. We know who's out for Brisbane. The Broncos score the first try, and the Cowboys score the next 18 points. It's 18-6. The Cowboys actually score again, but it's called a forward pass. Fair enough, probably was a forward pass. But Walsh is writhing around, wincing, holding like a hand injury. He's obviously still beat up a bit from Origin. There was no way Brisbane's going to come back. You tell me, what's the odds Brisbane's going to win this game by 24 points? It's 1,000,000 to 1. Like how it happened. We always talk about getting a try just before halftime can change the complexion of a match, so that's part of it. And Nanai gets an early HIA and can't come back, and he is very important, but none of these are excuses. All I can say is that Brisbane just built momentum and just built belief, and things were just coming off for Brisbane, and there is just enough class in that team with Walsh, who was still trying his heart out despite the fact he was labouring, and obviously Adam Reynolds, you still got Carrigan, Staggs, it's the usual suspects, but the Cowboys have got difference makers as well, and I just don't know where these guys went. I do agree it's a weakness at halfback, and they've already made that decision that by not re-signing Townsend, but you've got Clifford in the reserves. You've even got Jackson Purdue. I really feel like cut the cord there because it's not the strongest lineup for North Queensland, and this is just diabolical at home to blow the game. And it doesn't matter if they would have won the game by 6. My best bet would have lost just as much as they lost the game 24. So although it makes me look way more wrong, yeah, I got this wrong. Congratulations to anyone out there who saw this coming because, yes, it's a derby and you can say Brisbane just got up for it despite what's going on in their year. But this Brisbane team was down and out, downtrodden, and with no man, with no Haas, this type of trip, that's just a tough game, and it's just unexplainable. How does that Brisbane team, when I needed them against the Titans, they get outscored 36-0 second half when they were beating the Titans, and then when I don't need Brisbane this week, they outscore the Cowboys 36-0 on the road, and they're down 12. I'm at a loss to figure this out, but I definitely downgrade North Queensland. I saw them as that type of sleeper, that type of dark horse, still challenging for the 4, has a level that can play with top 4 teams. But that's one too many times North Queensland have let me down, just surprised me with these no-shows. And a lot of them have been at home in important games. It clearly just shows something's off with this team this year.
And I think to add 2 points to what you said, you mentioned in the, some of their depth options in reserve grade. Also got Tom Chester, who's played fullback and centre for them. Last round in Q Cup, he ran 422 meters. Like, that's like world record territory. And the other thing I wanted to add was you mentioned when the score was 18-6. Well, the person that scored for the Broncos was Corey Jensen. He was paying $85 on Top Sport, and it was the first time he'd scored in 7 years, let alone scoring first. So, the Broncos were in this situation where you could almost say their first try was so astronomically large odds that the Cowboys just shouldn't have been losing from there, but they imploded. Broncos took advantage of the door that was left ajar, so great job there by the Bronx. Game 6, mate, Bulldogs defeat the Dragons 28 points to 10, and we were a little bit split on this game, or I certainly was on the preview show, where on one hand, I did prefer the Bulldogs' consistency over an entire season, but I did note they're yet to win an away game in Sydney this year. And just to reiterate another point from the preview show as well, the Dragons have only won back-to-back on 2 occasions this year, and both of those occasions included a Tigers win. So we look at this Dragons side, right, and we're seeing all these news articles through the week that they're up, they're about, they're flying, the Dragons, so most improved team up there with the Doggies, Flanagan Coach of the Year, and I just don't buy it at all. I really don't. Like, as it currently stands, they've got 1 more win than the Raiders and 1 more win than the Broncos. They had 1 more win than the Dolphins as well until they eventually won today as well. So I don't really view the Dragons as this suddenly improved team that's up there. And it's just a reminder of the inconsistency of their season, because we do get these odd, really great performances from the Dragons, like the game against the Storm. But now you look either week of that, they got smashed by Penrith, showed up, and then had a game at home against another tough side and didn't show up. So there's just this inconsistency. And, I feel like I get on the recap show dating back to like round 4, where I'm like, Dragons need to find some consistency. They need to build something in their game. And I've always said it's time to back it up. And like, it's round 23 now, and it's safe to say they're just not capable of playing at a consistent level. How can Dragons fans, let's say they do finish inside the top 8. They are absolutely making up the numbers. But the only time they can win 2 games in a row this year is when the Tigers are one of them. There's no evidence to say they could suddenly win 4 games in a row to go all the way, because there's not even half the evidence of that, and if it doesn't include the Tigers, right? Meanwhile, for the Bulldogs, they're a great side. They fought for the full 80 minutes. They scored the first try in this game. They scored the last try. They only missed 25 tackles. So it was a great performance in a game that I expected to be a fair bit closer. But the Doggies, again, shown their class and improvement this year. So fantastic win for them, mate. How did you see this one?
Yeah, you say if the Dragons make the finals, let's say if they were to get in 8th, they'd have to, like, who could the Dragons beat? They're going to come up against someone who's probably 5th. And funnily enough, that's what Canterbury was in this game. It was 5th versus 8th. So this is the type of opponent, and you wouldn't get them in Cogra. You'd have to go to their house where Canterbury's unbeaten. So you talk about, could St. George beat anyone in the finals? Who else? I mean, it could be St. George. It could be up against someone like Manly.
Manly or Cowboys, I reckon, for 5th.
themselves a home final. If Cronulla slides back, it could be someone like that. Well, hey, Flano taking the Dragons into Shark Park. There's a storyline, and that's still possible. And I won't write the Dragons off for the finals, but you've definitely been on this. I'm pretty sure you've said, like, oh, I don't like the Dragons this week because they played well last week. Or I'm worried about the Dragons this week because they were so bad last week. They are such a yo-yo team. But this was the week to back up the great performance, which I mentioned was one of the Dragons' best wins in years down in Melbourne. It was a finals atmosphere. My best bet was under 48.5, which wins pretty well. We win by 10.5 points, and we didn't have to sweat the last 15 minutes. But the funny thing is, there's an intercept try 3 minutes into the game. And then the Bulldogs are scoring. Then the Dragons are scoring, answering with a perfectly timed kick in behind the line. Then the Dogs respond with a kick in behind the line. And I'm like, there's been 20 points in this game because there's a penalty as well. There's been 20 points in this game without a line break. You know, what's going on? And then there's a beautiful line break assist. I think it was Sexton puts Cherry over, but then the Dragons get back in the game with a beautiful line break, and it's Sloan showing what he can do. And Sloan's probably the last fullback you want when you've got unders because he can just create a try out of nothing, but he can also gift the opponent. It was 20-10 for a total of 30 points at halftime. So I was a bit nervous, and I was thinking anything that can possibly generate points is happening in this game. So even though I felt like at the perfect spot and perfect teams for an unders, I was a bit nervous, but it all slowed down second half. There was only one try. It was just 8 points to Canterbury in the second half. So while St. George maybe with that late try felt they could mount a comeback, St. George was off. And this is a highly impressive performance by the Dogs. Clinical, so good defensively, coming in to a packed house, sold out against a team that was on a massive confidence high. And the Dragons threw a bit at Canterbury, but Canterbury just looks so comfortable when they do need to defend a set on their line. You just back them in every time. And then Canterbury can be dangerous when they get the chance to attack. And we know you've got the speed and the outside backs. And, you know, a guy that, because Crichton we talked about is maybe the best player on the planet behind Cleary. But once again, you didn't see a season like this out of Bronson Cherry coming. Being out of the game for 4 years. 4 years ago, it looked like he could be a Blues prospect. Like the talents were being there. But take your hat off to him, I think, but be out of the game for that long. But to stick at it, keep training, and force his way into this side and be so important and be a difference maker. Because, again, the ceiling of the Dogs is how many points can they score. We know they can defend with the best of them. Whether they can, all this show, the bit of the theme has been who can win finals games. You know, who can make a run. I'm not saying Sharks are going to win the comp, or if you're calling Manly a dark horse, you're predicting they'll win the comp. But we're talking about teams that can cause upsets in the finals. And for the Dogs to do that, they've got to be able to score points against the likes of Penrith, Storm. And there is the talent to do it on a night where everything clicked for them. The Dragons are not at that level. So this win doesn't prove that, but it's definitely one of their best wins in what's been such a stellar season.
100%, man. And just to add one final point to each of those sides, last round for Clarkey's collect in the final game went in an unders score for the Dogs as well. And I went a little bit conservative and pushed that up. And every time the Raiders were attacking their line, I kept saying to my missus, this is good. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, we want the Raiders attacking because the Bulldogs' goal line defense is so good. And my point on the Dragons was I was having a look while you were speaking, dating back to round 9, except for one time where they went back to back, it has literally been win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. So now they've gone loss, win, loss. So they're due for a win, and guess who they're versing next round? My Titans, sure. And Kieran Foran's 300.
With the tail between their legs. And I will throw back to you for one other thing, because lots of comments about is it an alleged bite by Flanagan on Crichton? You're the man who's across all the news. So what have you heard with regards to the charge and the evidence around that?
Yep. So at the time, all the Fox League analysts said, yes, it looks like a bite. Crichton did have blood on the nose. Shane Flanagan, who is, of course, his father, he came out and denied it post-game, said Kyle said he didn't do it. and he has now been referred straight to the NRL judiciary, meaning he will have to answer for what's happened here, and they will review that case. So there'll be 3 panel members. Given he's told his dad not guilty, and that's what's out in the media now, I expect he will plead not guilty to the case. But my gut feeling says he'll be named on Tuesday and then later suspended through the week. I think for the Dragons, Farmanua Brown, who is a hooker slash half, I think he's back in reserve grade, so they have him as an option, or Jesse Marshke. But look, it doesn't matter. It's big Kieran Foran. 4+, I would say. I think it'll be grade 3 contrary or grade 2 contrary conduct. I think that would be his first charge of that nature. So we'd be looking at 3 to 4 weeks. But winning, this is all nothing talk because it's Kieran Foran's 300th. The Titans are getting a win. I'm going to be there on the Wollongong Hill, baby. So can't wait for that game. Game 7, mate. Let's talk about your team. The Dolphins, they defeat the Warriors 34 points to 32. And look, on the preview show, we were really undecided on how this game would play out. And given it went to Golden Point, there was probably hesitation there for good reason. What a way for the Dolphins to get it done. Like, they just had to win. They had to win. It's as simple as that. And they did. So credit there. I hate to say it, and I'm not going to – everyone knows who I'm talking about when I say this, but I'm not trying to be a dick. Chanel Harris-Tavita, Warriors goal kicking, did let them down again, unfortunately. There was one particular bad one just next to the post that he probably should have got. So goal kicking let them down. Dare I go one step further and say it cost them again, like it did earlier. But I will say both sides were really hungry, man, and you could tell that they both wanted it because that desperation was evident in kind of the momentum back and forth. You know, usually when a side doesn't want it, you'll see one side get momentum and it'll be enough to score a run of tries to end the game. Wasn't the case here at all. It was a seesawing affair. And again, I'm going to say it, mate. The Warriors are a much better team with Tamari Martin in it. He had 3 try assists and a try today. And I'm not being funny, guys. I would have tipped the Warriors at the line on the preview show if I knew he was going to play, because he just suits this Warriors side a lot better than what Sean Johnson does at the moment. In terms of what I can take away from this game, I don't really know what I can, because I kind of got what I expected from both sides, right? We had a desperate Warriors side that wants to finish their season on a high for a club legend in Sean Johnson. And we had a desperate Dolphins side that's coached by Wayne Bennett and simply had to win. I do think the Dolphins do need to improve from this level again, just because the intensity and the passion that was required to get a win like this, I don't think it's sustainable for the next 4 or 5 weeks of the season remaining. So they're a side that's not safe in the 8. This win definitely keeps them in contention and puts them in that 8 again, but they need to keep improving because this won't be good enough against some of the sides above them, I feel, in my opinion, mate. What about yourself? How did you see it? Did you end up having a bet on this game once Sean Johnson was ruled out?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I bet on my Finns. So great to see some comments coming through quoting Princess Bride. So there you go. I'm not that old. Some other people actually talking about. You said if you knew Johnson wasn't playing and it was Tamari Martin, you would have backed the Warriors. If I knew Johnson wasn't playing, I would have backed the Dolphins, being honest, on Tuesday. Because as I said in the preview, the spanner in the works is Johnson announcing his retirement and now giving the Warriors this swan song and this reason to fight for the final few games was what scared me off. So if that was the reason why I just didn't want to lay the points with the Dolphins, and Johnson's going, look, whether or not we make the finals, just everything, it means everything to me to play for the Warriors. I've never taken it for granted, but now my days are numbered, let's make the most of every game. That made the Warriors a dangerous team to me. And then Johnson's out. I kind of thought, well, what a letdown. Now, clearly, they're going to target like getting up for Johnson's final couple of home games. But this is a mail-in, potentially. The Warriors' season ended last week, couldn't beat the Eels at home. You come in to play the Dolphins in Finland. The Finns have lost 3 on the trot, lost like 5 of the last 6. It's an absolute must-win for the Dolphins. They're closer to full strength. I wanted to be on the Finns. I laid the 6.5 myself personally, I have to admit. And it's once again, I should have just gone first half line. Once again, it's Dolphins dominant first half and falling away second halves. But also, you are right that the Warriors have this year played a lot better when Johnson's out, and Tamari Martin is that better option. And what spirit the Warriors had. Once again, they just play their best footy when they shouldn't, when you don't expect it, when they're up against it, when there's players out, when they're down considerably. And Warriors were undermanned a few weeks ago or a few months ago when they hosted the Finns at Mount Smart, but won that game as well. So the Dolphins owed them one for this game, and it was, remind me, the halftime score, I think it was a 14-point lead. It was 20-6.
Yeah, they
Yeah, it
got
was
a
20
controversial
half
penalty
to
and
the
then
Finns.
scored.
And the Warriors had a man in the sin bin as well.
Yeah.
So it should have been a regulation win for the Dolphins, but the Warriors actually scored with a man in the bin. And then the Dolphins appeared to take control, but the Warriors kept coming. Awesome fight back. Ends up with a couple of tries from kicks in behind, including a penalty try. I think fair call. Nikarima is tugging on the jersey there. And it's a game where the Warriors lose despite scoring more tries than the Dolphins. The Dolphins score 5 tries, convert them all. That's why Ryan's saying if you want to go against the Dolphins, or this game would have been a good candidate to take try handicap. Like you probably could have got the Warriors plus 1.5 tries. And in the end, they actually won the game by a try because one side's much better at kicking goals. And the Warriors, as you said, Harris DeVito, look, they scored 6 tries. You can't expect him to kick 6 from 6. But he missed a couple that were makeable. And then on top of that, I don't mean to heap on him, but Harris DeVito had 2 pretty decent looks at field goals and sprayed them both wide as well. And it all would be forgotten with those missed kicks if he could have just drained those field goals. They're for the win. And instead, it's Sean O'Sullivan that steps up. You don't even think – you thought the Dolphins ended up a bit wide on that set and a bit far out. Sean O'Sullivan kicks a 45-meter 2-point field goal for the win that the Dolphins needed absolutely desperately, as you said, have gotten back into the 8. Equal points with the Dragons, but superior points differential. Still a lot of work to do, and that's why I definitely don't write the Dragons off. But I do believe that final spot on the ladder comes down to those 2 teams, with one other that you can't ignore yet, which is Newcastle, which we can move to cap the show.
We'll move to that, in just 1 second. I'll just say this. The Warriors have a tough run home, but any money – we don't usually do this on the show, mate. Any money you want and any odds, I'll give it to you. Adam Finowa's last game in a Warriors jersey and Sean Johnson's last ever, the Warriors will get the 2 competition points in round 27. Any money you want, any odds, I guarantee you, mate.
No, I'm already thinking ahead that like one of the best bets you could ever make was that return home game when the Warriors played that first home game after COVID, and Reece Walsh got COVID that week and couldn't play. Remember when Reece Walsh was on the Warriors and I had made the Warriors my best bet? It was like my best bet of the season. And then I find out Reece Walsh is out and I was gutted, but they still won easily. They were always there are certain games where where the occasion goes a long way. Not always. I remember thinking Raiders were a certainty in Croker's 300th. I think it was 300th or a record-breaking game. But look, let's keep our eyes one looking ahead for sure. Warriors last home game.
Look, unfortunately no one picked up my joke there. They had the bye in round 27. So if you had to set a bet there, of course they're going to get the 2 competition points.
That's on your face, but I just thought you meant last home game.
Yeah, round 27 they've got the bye, mate. So I was being a bit cheeky, but no one picked it up. So
that's why you said pick up the 2 points. Very good, mate. Very good, which they did today, and I agree. Still not going to make it. Hasn't been the Warriors' year, but they remind us that when they're an underdog, they're such a dangerous team. Though they fell short today, they certainly covered the line.
Definitely, mate. No, it's a great call. Final game of the round, we just spoke about them then. Of course, it is the Newcastle Knights, and they defeat the Tigers 34 points to 18. And Winnie, I always say this, and I don't always get proved right, but I always feel once that side gets the try on the brink of half time, it just crushes the other team because they know the coach is going to spray them. They know that 6 points or 4 points they're going to fight back for. And the Knights could not have got a more freaky try. It turned into FIFA for a second there between KP and Fletcher Sharp. And that really did hurt the Tigers' spirit. It took the air out of them. To that point, I thought the Tigers were traveling okay. They were competing. And I think that's the key for the Tigers here, really. They've only got 4 wins this year. And in all of those wins, except their larger win over the Raiders at Campbelltown, their opposition gave them a leg up. And that's what enabled them to stay in the game and eventually get the win. Anytime a side just doesn't give the Tigers opportunity, then they just don't have that belief within themselves, I feel, from watching them this year. But I think we got exactly what we thought we would here. We have a Tigers side that's shown this year they're capable of scoring, give or take 20 points per game, but defensively they've just leaked too many points, and that was the case today. I think they leaked. We did say it in the preview show, but it was something like 8 of their past 9 games they've gone 30 plus. Unfortunately, they need to add to that again. But I just want to look over the fence of the Knights here, Winnie. Look, I was critical of the Dragons before, and I'm going to be critical of the Knights. I don't rate them for finals at all here. I just look at the halves combination they have right now. And the options they've got are Jackson Hastings, Jack Cogger, Tyson Gamble, Will Price, and Phoenix Crossland. And I just don't see how they've landed on this combination as their best. I really don't. And I'll just say it. They can't play finals this year with the current halves pairing because it puts too much pressure on Kalen Ponga to create a lot in attack. Almost everything. He is their danger man. In my mind, their best halves combination would actually be Will Price and Jack Cogger. And I think if they were to bring Price in, there's the element of unknown because not too many clubs have studied his game. He does bring another layer to their attack, which takes some pressure off Kalen Ponga. And it's the only halves combination they haven't trialed. And I just feel if you're going to trial 4 or 5 half combos, and we're still trialing combos in round 23, throw one more dart at the board. What have you got to lose? No one's going to get to the end of the season and go, thank God he only trialed 5 halves combinations, Adam O'Brien. It would have sucked if he tried a 6, right? No one's going to say that. And I just look at Jack Cogger in the grand final. He took the dominant half role, and that allowed Nathan Cleary to play like a 5/8 and come up with those running plays. Now, one game on the biggest stage is, of course, different to multiple weeks in the regular season, and then what Knights would hope into the finals. But I just think you also carry Crossland as the 14 there, which gives you a hooker and a half option. To be honest, mate, I wasn't too impressed with the Knights in this game. Outside of Kalen Ponga, Fletcher Sharp, and Tyson Frizzell, it just felt like they coasted to what was expected to be an easy victory and probably was in the end, mate. So I'll get your thoughts on the game, please. And afterwards, your best thoughts on what the Knights' best halves combination is in your opinion, because there's so many options, right?
But I know, I think that's a great suggestion. I also think it's great that the Knights have unearthed the talent of Sharp, and he got to have those games when Pong was out at fullback, and he is a handful on the wing. You lose Dom Young, now you get a guy like Sharp to put out there, and these players that can just help you get a try out of nothing, it sure helps. The Knights had to win today at home, and the Tigers are pretty woeful, but the line was double digits. The bookies weren't missing them. In fact, the Knights do cover that line. What I probably missed, I'm looking at the total though, 52 points. I feel like it went over, but the total actually probably was 52.5. Maybe someone could comment. I'm not actually certain the game did go over, but in general, teams outside the top 8 playing daytime footy, you've got to look for points. The previous game was another example, and there was 66 points between Finns and Warriors, and this one pretty high scoring as well. The Knights, in terms of making the finals, they have a very tough game. Newcastle is at Cronulla in 7 days' time, but it would be up the odds for the Knights to make the finals, because if the Knights upset Cronulla, everyone will take them a bit more seriously. And the Knights end the season at Rabbitohs, host Titans, host Dolphins. Knights would be favoured in each of those games if they keep winning. So the Knights, I believe, will have to win the final 4, run the gauntlet to get into the finals. That is still possible. So we just have to respect Newcastle still got the belief for sure, and still have players that can change games. But whether they are playing with the correct combination, I don't trust O'Brien. Never have. So I think you should probably take over, and let's give it Cogger and Price a go there.
100%, man. And you think if they were to move on Daniel Saifidi, Jackson Hastings, and potentially Tyson Gamble, that's a lot of salary cap. But then they re-signed Gamble. We don't know. Well, Saifidi looks like he's moving on, but yeah, they're in a strange spot with their roster. That's for sure. The line looked to be
the total. James is 50.5. You say 51.5. So it's it actually did sneak over as well. So we got to look for this. My inclination when I see total 48.5, 49.5, 52.5, I'm never thinking over because those are really high numbers. But late in the year, you get teams that just want to play footy. There's a lack of desperation there. And these tries, you call them fluky, but they happen more often when defenders are being a little bit lazier. There's a little bit more space and players are just willing to try things. So that's a takeaway. I know we're near the hour mark, mate, but the Olympics, it's been unbelievable. I've loved it the last 2 weeks. It ends tonight. I gave you Winnie's medal multi 2.5 weeks ago on the preview show, $13 odds. We went Aussies over on a medal index. We've smashed that. The Aussies have been amazing. I think they're third on the medal tally. It's been so much fun watching this gold rush and all these incredible performances by Australians at these Olympics have done us all proud. China, we were worried because I went over 86.5 medals. That's a lot of medals, but China got there overnight. I think they're at least 90 and probably get a couple more today. So we'll clear that by 5 or more medals. Took the French to win one of their national sports, either rugby or football. And in fact, the French won rugby sevens very early. And it comes down to America. And it is basically my fault now if the multi at $13 doesn't win, because I basically early crowed that leg. And after USA only got 4 gold from their first 30 medals, I said USA's left too many out there. They're left a few too many in close finishes in the pool. And there's no way USA is going to score over or get over 40 gold medals. And my leg is under 40.5. But since then, the USA just keep coming relentless. Overnight, they won every event they were supposed to win. They pinched the women's hurdles by a hundredth of a second. Most people probably saw the men's 100 meters. They won by 5,000ths of a second. Too many gold medals for the USA. They are on 39 gold. So tonight, there's only about 4 events that the USA has a realistic chance of winning gold, and they're going to win the women's basketball. So we've basically got 1 gold to play with from 3 events. It's the 71-kilo wrestling, it's the Omnion in the cycling, and it is the gold medal match in the volleyball, which is actually on in prime time, I think in a couple of hours. Italy plays USA. I reckon our $13 multi that I know a ton of people in the group and following our show have followed for 2 straight weeks, 2.5 really, because some of the events kicked off early. It could come down to cheering on Italy in the volleyball tonight, in the women's volleyball. So this will probably be the most invested anyone's ever been in volleyball, and it'll be well worth watching. And what a ride we've had, just like we got in Tokyo, where it came down to the final day and we lost by half a gold medal. On that occasion, it was Japan denying us. Surely it doesn't happen again, but it's on a knife edge, I reckon. So you got your money's worth of excitement, but of course, what you really want is your cold hard cash to end the weekend if you're on. So let's all chat about it in the group and follow along and cheer Italy and do anything we can to yank the tail of the Yanks.
Well said, mate. And to that we say, grazie per la visione e va alla squadra di Pava Volo, which means thank you for watching and go the Italy volleyball team. Over to you, Winnie, for the famous last words.
I caught most of that. And Jeremy mentions, like, hey, shout out our New Zealand followers. In the high jump, USA wasn't expected to get the gold. This American jumps PBs and is dead even with Kerr from New Zealand on height and on countbacks. And it's a shared gold medal situation where they are tied. And in high jump, they'll let them both claim first place and both win gold, which would still count as a gold on the medal tally. And the American says, I don't want to share. We're going to a jump off. And then the Kiwi wins. And New Zealand's had an outstanding Olympics too. Shout out to our Kiwi followers. New Zealand clears it in the jump off, gets the gold medal, and athletics gold for New Zealand, unreal. And it saves us because it gives us 1 extra gold to play with. And there's a real chance we could win this time by half a gold. It's not done yet, but that would have hurt like crazy. So while it did hurt, as I said, watching the hurdles and several other finishes where Americans have just come over the top. But that's what it's all about, the highs and lows. I've loved the Olympics. Hopefully plenty of others have as well. And we get one more night to enjoy it. Thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the weekend too with some good punting results. We'll be back to do it all again Tuesday night. We'll see you then. Lego.